Okay, great. Glad to see everybody. Thank you for being here. Okay, before we start talking about the poem per se, in 1923, in the journal The Dial, T.S. Eliot published an essay, a really important essay called Ulysses, Order, and Myth. And this is about James Joyce's novel, Ulysses, but it's also about what he's doing in the wasteland. So he says this, in using the myth, in manipulating a continuous parallel between contemporaneity and antiquity, Mr. Joyce is pursuing a method which others must pursue after him. It is simply a way of controlling, of ordering, of giving a shape and a significance to the immense panorama of futility and anarchy, which is contemporary history. Psychology, ethnology, and the Golden Bough have concurred to make possible what was impossible even a few years ago. Instead of narrative method,
Meeting is being
they now
recorded.
use the mythic method. It is, I seriously believe, a step toward making the modern world possible for art. So keep that in mind as we talk about the wasteland. Yeah, Douglas?
Could you read that sentence? The
You
the
read that sentence.
immense the immense whatever it
Sure,
was of
sure.
anarchy.
Yes, I'd be happy to. It is simply a way of controlling. Somebody's got background noise, maybe
I
back
got
on
it.
mute if
I
you,
got it. I got it.
okay, of controlling, of ordering, of giving shape and significance to the immense panorama of futility and anarchy, which is contemporary history. So the immense panorama of futility and anarchy, which is contemporary history.
Thank you.
Remember, Eliot started working on the wasteland around 1919, although bits of it had been written earlier. Remember, he's like a collagist. He puts together bits of things and he writes bits of things through the years and then finally figures out ways to juxtapose them with each other. Okay. He's
So,
writing right after World War One. Yeah.
so Wasteland was it was not composed at one
Oh God, no.
stretch.
Oh God, no. We're going to talk about that. No, this came into being through years, and it came into being, and I have saved. I was looking through this book, The Facsimile Wasteland, this morning, which is, and I'm going to tell you a little story about this. This is a big book, so I can't hold up the whole thing. Eliot was, this poem never would have existed except for Eliot's friend Ezra Pound and a really wealthy Irish American lawyer named John Quinn, who was a patron of the arts. Pound knew John Quinn first and introduced John Quinn to T.S. Eliot just by letter. They never actually met. John Quinn became a financial patron of T.S. Eliot. He was giving him money. John Quinn really believed in Eliot's poetry. He was a patron of the avant-garde. He really believed in Pound. He really believed in Eliot. He was helping out Yeats. He was helping out a lot of painters and so on. You know, he had a lot of money. And they helped him eventually take time off from his job at Lloyd's, the bank. But also John Quinn and also Ezra Pound was championing Eliot's poetic fortunes with the journals The Dial and The Observer. So Eliot was not just leaping to fame on his own accord. He was writing this brilliant poetry, but he was also writing a whole lot that never saw the light of day. And he was also writing some really, really bad, hateful poetry, which has only been published quite recently. I told you he was anti-Semitic. He was anti-Semitic with a vengeance, you know, and wrote some really nasty stuff. But here's the deal. Eliot was working on the wasteland and eventually he had a nervous breakdown. Lloyd's gave him 3 months paid leave and he traveled first to Margate, this is 1921, and then to Lausanne, where he was receiving psychiatric treatment. He was exhausted. He and his wife were both incredibly ill. He was struggling for money, like really struggling for money, you know, and just having a really rough time. So he finished The Wasteland at Lausanne. He sent the whole thing to Ezra Pound, and Pound edited it. Eliot also was editing. So the first rule of learning to write poetry is to learn to love to cut. It's like you're going to write a lot of bad stuff, and you have to learn to just hack away at it. And that's what Eliot did. It's a little bit like creating the Michelangelo statues. They're carved out of the rock, where you just carve away and carve away and carve away until you've got what you want. So I'm going to read you, for instance, a little bit of Eliot's struggles to compose this poem. And this comes from what eventually becomes Unreal City, you know, and apostrophizing London. But listen to this. You kill and breed and feed daily life, London, the swarming creatures that you breed, scampering, striving, huddled, dazed, the concrete in the among half stunned beneath, between a heavy sky, stunned, solely, quickly, responsive to the momentary need. It's there, formal, vibrates unconscious to their chords of destiny, neither how to nor how to, knowing little what they think and much less what they feel, but lives only chiefly in the awareness of the observing eye, numbs, burrowing, spectral, phantasmal goblins tunneling in brick and stone and steel. And you're like, what? None of this is in the final wasteland. You finally get to the word London. Eliot was willing to cut. Pound helped him cut. The whole beginning of which section is it? Well, we'll get there later. The fresco lines. Eliot cut more than 80 lines of one of the sections. Yeah, not the fire sermon. There must be a game of chess. Yeah, the whole beginning of a game of chess is just really horrible stuff. And Eliot cuts 80 lines, and then he gets to the beautiful, beautiful lines. A rat crept softly through the vegetation, dragging its slimy belly on the bank. And Ezra Pound writes in the margin, okay, stet. It's like finally we're on home ground here. Okay. The whole beginning of the wasteland, which is now one of the most famous beginnings of any poem ever. April is the cruelest month. It begins with this long, rambling story about these guys in a bar. And the guy's called Tom, which is obviously himself, and it's rambling on and on and on. Eliot just X through the whole thing. And then you finally get to April is the coolest month. So the point I'm making is that this is a poem. We have the published version. Also, Eliot did not have notes in the first version. The first version that was published in a journal did not have the notes. And then they wanted to do it as a little book. And they're like, it's too short for a book. What you going to do? So Eliot added the notes. So this is a cobbled together masterpiece. It's put together through time, out of fragments. The only section that Eliot wrote pretty much at one go is the last section, What the Thunder Said. And you can see that driving agony in that section. Da 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 like that. He's not having to stop and start and shift gears and start again and throw stuff out. He's just finally broken through, and that's because he's in an asylum. He's in incredible agony of mind, and it finally breaks through and just comes pouring out. You know, so
And
all yeah. Go ahead.
uh, th this is just all very interesting. That the way that he composed. I want to ask you, how about your writing of poetry? Do you do the same thing? Do you find yourself kludging together things that you didn't know would go together, or rewriting or eliminating?
Oh
How
yeah.
how does this relate to your process?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, hey, look, I'm not a poetic genius like Eliot.
Well,
I'm not
come on.
taking the course of poetic history, but sure, absolutely. Like just this morning. So I'm in this group called The Grind, which is, an online group of is women poets. Doesn't have to be women, but it happens to be. And we work together month after month. You have to write something every day. Luckily, you can do revisions. And so I'm always looking through my old bad poems saying, oh my God, what can I find? Because I can't write a new poem every day. I have no thoughts in my mind. So yeah, just this morning I was looking through and I found this poem and I thought, well, okay, um, yeah, I can put together this and I can and I can throw out this part and then I can, at least submit something today. Yeah, totally. I mean, you've got to learn to cut, you've got to learn to look back through your stuff. You've got to learn to never throw anything away from your files because it might be that you find something years later. I
that it
just
works with.
that I didn't even remember writing. And I
Now,
really like this, you know? Yeah.
okay, a related question is I'm relating this to songwriting, which I know a lot more about. The Beatles wrote together. Paul
Yeah.
and John wrote together, and sometimes John would have a piece of a song, but it needed a bridge or something like that, and
Yeah.
Paul would contribute the bridge, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Do you ever write with any? I've never even heard of this. Do you ever write with anybody else? You just mentioned a group. That's why I bring it up.
I know people who do collaborative poetry with another poet. I don't do that, but I've written two books with photographers. That is, they do the photographer and I do the poetry. I love to collaborate that way. It really gives me language that I didn't know I had. But yeah, collaboration is great. I mean, this idea of the starving, struggling, solitary artist is just really not very accurate. Artists need they need a community mostly. There's a few, but yeah, yeah.
Okay, one more question. I'm really sorry for
No,
interrupting your
you're
flow,
okay.
but that
Okay.
that just the process interests me. The other thing is I have written songs, and I'm pretty sure this is true of the Beatles too, not that I'm comparing myself, but they'll write a song and then change the gender and it makes it work. Have you ever done anything like that where you change from, say, first person to second person
Yeah,
or third person? Have you
yeah.
ever done that?
Oh yeah, all the time. Sure, sure.
All the time.
Back and forth, because sometimes you write something in the second person as a way of distancing it from yourself so you can kind of get a look at it. But then if you change it back to first person, it makes it work better. On the other hand, sometimes it's better to change it back to second person or third person, she. I've never changed from male to female, me personally. But
And it's weird that it does change, isn't it? Isn't
that's
it strange that you write something in the first person, but if you make it in the second person, it makes it a whole different thing.
yeah, it does. It does. It does.
Okay,
Which
sorry
is
for all
why
the interruption.
poetry is so fun. It's so hands-on and it's so process oriented. William Carlos Williams says the dream is in pursuit. And when I first read that, I didn't get it, but it's absolutely true. The whole everything of it is the pursuit of it rather than the finished product. The finished product is nice, but the pursuit is what really matters, you know. Okay, so we're
Sorry.
gonna we're gonna see where we get. The burial of the dead.
You want me to boot it up?
Yeah, oh no. Well, not yet. I like seeing your
Okay.
faces for a little while. This is a phrase from
Okay.
the Book of Common Prayer. Eliot said before, when he published the poem, he pretty much said, "This is not my final mood. This is expressing a personal grouse." And he also did say, "I'm not trying to speak for, the state of the world," which is really not true. He said, "I'm just expressing my own situation." So immediately, Eliot feels that he's on a journey. He feels by this time in his life that he's on a journey toward something, and he doesn't know yet what it is. But the pre-conversion poems, The Hollow Man is from 1925, and then 26, 27, he finally converts to very high Anglicanism in 27. He's searching through this poem and then through the poems that follow for some kind of spiritual ground, right? Now, before I go further, I want to talk about the importance of the notes because what Eliot says in the notes, most of them we don't need to really dwell on, but he says two things that are super important. He says, not only the title, The Waste Land, but the plan and a good deal of the incidental symbolism of the poem were suggested by Miss Jessie L. Weston's book on the Grail legend, From Ritual to Romance. So y'all know the Grail legend, the Arthurian search for the Grail, and only Parzival is pure enough to actually find the Grail. That also becomes the ground for Wagner's opera, Parzival, which Eliot quotes later in the poem. Okay. Indeed, so deeply am I indebted, Miss Weston's book will elucidate the difficulties of the poem much better than my notes can do, and I recommend it. I also recommend The Golden Bough. I've used especially the two volumes, Adonis, Attis, and Osiris. So what he's talking about here is myths and legends of regeneration, fertility myths, and religious myths of, the search for the grail, the search for holiness, the search for that which will not pass away, that which has not been destroyed by the immense panoply of chaos and futility that is the modern world, you know. And then the other most important note is the one about Tiresias. When he says Tiresias, although a mere spectator and not indeed a character, is yet the most important personage in the poem, uniting all the rest. Just as the one-eyed merchant, seller of currants, melts into the Phoenician sailor, and the latter is not wholly distinct from Ferdinand, Prince of Naples, so all the women are one woman, and the two sexes meet in Tiresias. What Tiresias sees, in fact, is the substance of the poem. So y'all know who Tiresias was in the Oedipus trilogy. He's the seer who tells Oedipus what the problem is. You killed your father and you married your mother, not the best way to approach ruling a kingdom. But also, myth has it that Tiresias, what is it? I think it's that Zeus and Hera were arguing about which sex enjoys sex more. And Tiresias at one point said men do, and at another point said women do. I think I might be garbling this. If Peter were here, but he's in Mississippi and I'm in California, he would know exactly. Tiresias was changed into a woman for 7 years and back to a man for 7 years, or he was changed into snakes or whatever. But anyway, Tiresias has been both sexes. And so Eliot is saying Tiresias is the central consciousness, this, you know, fragmented consciousness, this consciousness of the seer who has experienced both sides of everything. That is the central consciousness of the poem. Eliot also says that the characters in the poem, because, Eliot was like really interested in theater. He creates characters here, and some of them have names, Madame Sosostris, and so on and so forth. He says they're really all versions of recurring characters. So when Eliot refers to the Tempest and he refers to Ferdinand, Ferdinand can morph into the sun. He is the sun. Eliot's father at this time had just died, and he is emotionally expressing himself through the figure of the morning sun. So just keep it in mind that this poem, yes, it is fragmentary, but it is collegistic, but it's also held together by transformations and metamorphoses that are ongoing. And when you become like super familiar with the poem, it really all starts to, it doesn't blend together, but the such bits as Eliot has left in the final version merge seamlessly as a kind of complicated whole, you know? So we've got the title, which refers to the Anglican Book of the Dead, the Book of Common Prayer. Okay. Then we've got the super famous lines from Chaucer, the beginning of the Canterbury Tales. Eliot is echoing that and standing it on his head. And the beginning of the Canterbury Tales is Juan that April with his shora sota, the drought of March hath perished to the rota, and bathed every vein in switch liquor, of which virtue engendered is the fluor. Then longen folk to gon on pilgrimages. Right? So Chaucer's saying, when spring comes and the earth is fertile and every vein of every flower is bathed in such liquor, such sweetness, that the flowers come. Then folk long to go on pilgrimages. And off they trot to Canterbury. And that's the Canterbury Tales. Eliot, as I said, is turning this on its head. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, stirring memory and desire. mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Beautiful beginning, despair. But then all of a sudden, the voice changes a little bit, and he starts speaking in the voice of some unidentified character. Summer surprised us, coming over the Starnberger See with a shower of rain. We stopped in the colonnade and went on in sunlight into the Hofgarten and drank coffee and talked for an hour. That's not him. That's just a voice coming out of Europe. Bin gar keine Russin, stamme aus Litauen, echt Deutsch. I am not Russian. I come from Lithuania. I am a true German. And as one critic points out, World War I redrew the map of Europe. So this is somebody whose life has been affected by those shifting national borders. Now, this is really cool. Here's the next voice. And when we were children, staying at the Archduke's, my cousins, he took me out on a sled and I was frightened. He said, Marie, Marie, hold on tight. And down we went. In the mountains, there you feel free. I read much of the night and go south in the winter. There's a little essay published that points out that this Marie was a real person, that Eliot read the autobiography of the Countess Marie Lerisch, who was related to the Archduke of Meyerling in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And Eliot's quoting from her autobiography. When we were children, staying at the Archduke's, my cousins, he took me out on a sled and I was frightened. He said, Marie, Marie, hold on tight. So you can see already how Eliot, he's like a magpie. He's darting around through the mind of Europe and through the history of Europe, and he's cobbling together things. There's a treasure, here's a treasure, here's a treasure. And he puts them together, and it works brilliantly because he can control the tonality, but he's establishing already in this first stanza, this first brilliant, amazing stanza, this kind of panoply of voices, panoply of responses. I read much of the night and go south in the winter. And then we switch to Ezekiel, to Ecclesiastes. What are the roots that clutch? What branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images. A heap of broken images. Later, Eliot says, these fragments I have shored against my ruins. So his poem is like a heap of broken images shored against his ruins. Where the sun beats and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock. And I will show you something different from either your shadow at morning striding behind you or your shadow at even rising to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust. I forgot to mention the epigraph for the whole poem, which is from the Cumean Sibyl. And it means, I with my own eyes saw the Sibyl hanging in a glass vase at Cumae. And when the boy said, what is the matter? She said, I wish to die. This is from Petronius's Satyricon. And the Sibyl, had been given by Apollo as many years as grains of sand in her hand. So she wanted to have endurance, but she forgot to ask for an end to it. So she's condemned to go on forever and forever and forever. So that's the cheerful epigraph for this poem. Now we switch lines again, another reference, which I bet Brian probably got. Wie weht der Wind der Heimat zu, mein Irish Kind, verweilest du?
That's Tristan and Isolde.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
a seaman sings from the mast. You don't see him on the stage, but he sings, and it vexes Isolde immensely that he's mourning his departed girlfriend. But of course, they're carrying Isolde to Cornwall away from Ireland. And so that really grates on her.
Yeah, yeah. So these little beautiful lines here. And now, one of the most mysterious passages in Eliot's poetry. He does not specify who's speaking, but listen to this. You gave me hyacinths first a year ago. They called me the hyacinth girl. Yet when we came back late from the hyacinth garden, your arms full and your hair wet, I could not speak and my eyes failed. I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing, looking into the heart of light, the silence. Öd under das Meer, which means empty and desolate, the sea.
So I had a question about this.
Uh-huh.
Do you know Theodor Storm's poem Hyacinthen?
Mm-mm.
Because the first thing that struck me, given that he's already quoting German,
Yeah.
is this poem that it takes place in a hyacinth garden,
Uh-huh.
and the man wants to talk or embrace the girl, and then he wants to go home and go to sleep, but she has to dance. She has to keep dancing with strange. So, but the fragrance of hyacinths is all around. Anyway, it's a fairly well known
Yeah, I
German.
don't know it. I don't know it.
Theodor Storm would have been late 19th century,
Uh-huh. Yeah, he might well have known it. I don't know. Because
and I mean that's the first thing that popped into my mind because the woman in it is he's separated from her and
yeah,
she's and he wants to sleep. He's anyway.
yeah,
That I wondered. This is like it's like a plum pudding or a fruit cake stuffed with all
I
these
know.
references to zillions of different things. He's obviously very well read
Very
and
well
in
read.
multiple languages and I recognized a lot of the quotes in German as
Yeah,
well as the Latin.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
And of course, hyacinth also, that refers to the god slain for love, another fertility myth, you know.
yeah. Well, Theodor Storm also, I think, was a sort of very literary romantic poet. At any rate, that struck me as something that the mood is very similar to this.
It might
The
well be.
hyacinths are the kind of the motif of that.
It might well be. I have always thought this is it's like the timeless moment that we'll come to in Burnt Norton. The moment in and out of time. Here it's secular. Later on, it's going to be given a more religious connotation in the four quartets. I've always thought that this was some moment of radiant love. Other people have read it differently. When we came back late from the hyacinth garden, your arms full and your hair wet, I could not speak and my eyes failed. I take that as a good thing rather than a bad thing. I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing, looking into the heart of light, the silence. I just think those lines are incredibly beautiful and mysterious and strange. And there they are, right at the heart of this first poem. And then we move on with our pack of cards. Now he's referring to tarot. Of course, the tarot deck was used to prophesy the rising of the waters in the Nile, the return of fertility, right? But here it's given a much weirder, kind of bleaker, set of meanings. Madame Sosostris, famous clairvoyant, had a bad cold. Nevertheless, is known to be the wisest woman in Europe with a wicked pack of cards. And she's dealing out the cards and she's foretelling the future of this poem in a way. Here, she said, is your card, the drowned Phoenician sailor. This is Osiris. This is Phlebas the Phoenician in part 4. This is the Fisher King, the legend of the Fisher King, who, if he can be found through the Grail myth, he will restore the land to fertility. This is Ferdinand, who has lost his father. He seems drowned. Ferdinand seems drowned in the shipwreck at the beginning of the play The Tempest. So the drowned Phoenician sailor, all these drowned men. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Look. And of course, you recognize that beautiful song, Ariel's song from The Tempest. Full fathom five thy father lies. Of his bones are corals made. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Nothing in him that doth change, but doth suffer a sea change into something rich and strange. You know? So that's another kind of leitmotif that makes its way through this poem, referring in Eliot's own mind to his own recently lost father. Here is Belladonna, the lady of the rocks, the lady of situation. Great pun, because belladonna, of course, is poison, right? That's what's in oh God, the plants, the deadly nightshade, right? Whatever. Okay. But it also means beautiful woman. Here is Belladonna, which kind of sounds like the Madonna of the Rocks, the Lady of the Rocks is a Leonardo da Vinci painting. But this belladonna is the belladonna of what, ice cubes, the whatever, the lady of situations, which makes her sound very corrupt. She is all the women in this poem, high and low. Here is the man with three staves, and here the wheel, Phlebas the Phoenician, which is blank. Oh, and this here's the one-eyed merchant, Eugenides. And this card, which is blank, is something he carries on his back, which I am forbidden to see. So again, this feeling that there's a mystery right behind everything, a terrifying mystery, and you don't know what it is. I do not find the hanged man. Fear death by water. I see crowds of people walking around in a ring. Again, Buchanan says, consider the hundreds of thousands, by now millions, of refugees traveling around the face of the earth as if walking around in a ring. But also, Eliot later refers to, in Unreal City, in that passage, the crowds of people streaming back and forth across the bridges and streets of London. So crowds of people, the modern city, the modern world, walking around in a ring, aimless, not a complete circle, but just traveling. Thank you. If you see dear Mrs. Equitone, tell her I bring the horoscope myself. One must be so careful these days. And this is back to that kind of blasé, like that tone, So brilliant little, yeah. Douglas?
So this whole verse is Madame Sosostris, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she's talking. She's like this, oh, Madame Blavatsky type character, who's dealing out the cards. And here, this is your fortune. This is your fortune. But Eliot, of course, is controlling the scene. He's writing it. And so he's creating this character who is, in her own affected way, laying out the cast of characters that we're going to meet for the rest of the poem. Now he's quoting or troping off Baudelaire, the great French poet of the city, of urban squalor and decay and, kind of seamy fertility. Lines that he's quoting from Baudelaire begin, Fourmillante cité pleine de rêves, où le spectre en plein jour raccroche le passant, which means swarming city, capitalized in Baudelaire's case, city full of dreams, where the spectator in the middle of, in full daylight meets where a ghost in full daylight meets a passerby. So Unreal City, which is London, which is Paris, which is whatever. Under the brown fog of winter dawn, a crowd flowed over London Bridge, so many. I had not thought death had undone so many. Sighs, short and infrequent, were exhaled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet. Flowed up the hill and down King William Street to where St. Mary Woolnoth kept the hours with a dead sound on the final stroke of 9. There I saw one I knew and stopped him, crying, Stetson, you who were with me in the ships at my lee, that corpse you planted last year in your garden, has it begun to sprout? Will it bloom this year? Or has the sudden frost disturbed its bed? Oh, keep the dog far hence that's friend to men, or with his nails he'll dig it up again. You, hypocrite lecteur, mon semblable, mon frère. When I was taking high school French in high school, when I was taking French in high school, I thought that hypocrite lecture was like the coolest line in the world because it just slams you in the face. Hypocrite reader, my twin, my brother. which means you're in here with me, you know? So, swarming city, unreal city. Then he's quoting Dante or referring to Dante, the Dante's description of limbo in the Inferno, sighs short and infrequent were exhaled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet. Back to describing London itself, St. Mary Woolnoth. The hour of crucifixion is 9. And then you get this crazy voice. Hugh Kenner says, and this is very funny and cool. He says, in England, murderers bury their victims in the back garden. In America, they bury them in the desert. And that's the difference. So it's as if you've got this crazed, Stetson, that corpse you planted last year in the garden, has it begun to sprout? Referring again to fertility rituals, right? Not just a bulb, but a corpse. Will it bloom this year? Or has the sudden frost disturbed its bed? Oh, keep the dog far hence. This is quoting John Webster, the 17th century playwright, who writes in his play The White Devil, keep the wolf far hence, that's foe to man. Eliot loved those 17th century very macabre playwrights, Turner and Webster and others, he just loved them with all their corpses and their madmen heroes and so on and so forth, and melodrama, like some like off, a bad segment of Breaking Bad, that kind of stuff, Um, or with his nails, he'll dig it up again, right? So you've got now this like crazed voice saying, what, the dead bodies in the garden, are they going to come back up? Or keep the dog out, keep the dog out, the dog will give it up. Again, April is the cruelest month. Keep it buried, keep it buried, keep it buried. But this longing for fertility ritual, some kind of vegetation ritual that will bring life back to the wasteland. So that's the first section. Take a deep breath. Any questions, comments? Then we're going to move on to a game of chess, which is like a lot easier to just talk about quickly.
I just had one thought. This approach, this collage type approach that he's using, reminds me of Cubist painting,
Yeah,
where you're just looking at you're deconstructing the reality and putting it back together in facets, and it seems to echo that.
absolutely. And in fact, John Quinn, Eliot's patron, was also one of the patrons of the Armory Show, which is the first show that brought Cubist painting to America. So yeah, I mean, this is the avant-garde modernist movement. This is what's going on with the arts, is this experimentation with new forms to try to express, you know, this kind of broken world, but also to break down the traditional pieties of form and coherence and the unity of the personality and so on. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And the Armory Show, of course, caused a vast outcry in America when it was brought to our shores because people thought it was profoundly immoral. Although William Cross Williams, whom we'll get to next, was like totally excited by it. And he was friends with various Cubist painters. Did somebody else have a comment? Yeah, Tony, you're mute.
Yeah. I remember when I first was introduced to this poem,
Uh-huh.
having to try to go through and find all these references and see what Eliot was up to, which I imagine you have done. Uh, it's evident you've done it. I finally gave up, and my impression was, and tell me what you think about this. My impression was it didn't make that much difference. In other words, the lines themselves are powerful enough
Yeah.
that you really don't have to you don't really have to know all the references to get the full power of the poem. What do you think about that?
I think that's absolutely true. I think that's absolutely true. Remember, Elliot, I quoted that cool thing about the meaning is the meat that the burglar throws to the dog so he can get into the house and ransack it. You know, it's like Elliot's getting into the house, which is you as a reader and ransacking you with the poem. No, I did not look up all the references myself. I have taken a ton of classes where the wasteland was taught, and I am a great notes taker. And so I would just, I mean, like, here's This is my beloved book that my mom gave me when I was 17. And I, through the ages, kept all these notes about this poem. I love this poem. When I first looked at it in high school, I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah,
Because I watched Prufrock and I could read Prufrock okay. But this one I got as far as like, April is the cruelest month, and I didn't even know anything about Chaucer yet. And I'm like,
right.
okay, this is profoundly boring. I'm out of here.
Yeah,
It's hard.
but I found the investigation kind of exhausting. I mean, if you really wanted to have all these scholarly references at the right at the forefront of your consciousness, it just seemed overwhelming.
Oh yeah, totally. Because we're not educated the way Eliot was educated.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, Eliot is one of these people for whom this is his frame of reference, you know?
You know who was like that at Pomona was W.T. Jones. He was a
Yeah,
very multilingual, I think he was a Rhodes Scholar too. He was
yeah.
quite the classically educated guy. Okay, I've interrupted enough. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. But I mean, you're absolutely right. Eliot, this is just the world of the mind that Eliot inhabited, you know?
I, I,
Okay,
I
go ahead.
actually, I actually found to the extent that I recognize things in it, not being as classically educated as Eliot or W.T. Jones, but having, traces of it from having Latin and a fair amount of German poetry and myths and whatnot. Um, it it felt like this sense of emptiness seeking, trying to find a way to generate life again, that felt, the universalism of that came through
Oh,
more
yeah.
from having the connection to the thousand
Yeah.
of years of legends and people trying to make stories and connect it to people's life, to basically story tell about lives, be it Tristan and Isolde or Tiresias or the stories that he inserts in here, these little vignettes of people that are very modern, and several come up later in the poem, but that universality, I think, is very moving,
Mhm.
and to me, to the extent that some of this um, reminded me of things that I found that connection and the sort of kaleidoscopic picture there, that each little twist of the kaleidoscope brought out something that also connected to some other piece somewhere. And
Yeah.
I guess that in the process of reading it, I can see why you have to keep reading it many times.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
every time it's like a kaleidoscope. Every time it's a little bit different.
A little bit different. Yeah, absolutely. That's really nice. Yeah. And this, we were talking the other day about tradition and the individual talent and Eliot's idea of impersonality. This is what he means by impersonality. It's not lack of feeling. There's a ton of feeling in this poem. It's that you're not just saying, "Oh, I am so unhappy. I need money. Send me money. My wife is crazy. I'm ill." It's not like that. It's not, as Leslie said, prose selfies. This is, you know, personal intelligence and personal feeling and personal everything, personal loss, personal desire, personal memory, reading memory and desire projected outward into something else, created into something else. Yeah. So a game of chess essentially is, in a sense, three stories. It's about Belladonna, the lady of the rocks, the lady of situations. And the first long verse paragraph is um, influenced by Antony and Cleopatra, influenced by descriptions of Cleopatra on her burnished throne. The chair she sat in, like a burnished throne, glowed in the marble. This is an upper class woman surrounded by, if you read a shelter magazine like House Beautiful, all this fancy, ornate, Rococo stuff. And she's sitting at her dressing table the glitter, oh, okay, blah, 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 blah. And this is really one long winding sentence all the way until we get down to in which satellite a carved dolphin swam, right? Now, the dolphin is a beautiful image because Cleopatra refers to Antony as a dolphin when he's making love with her, like a dolphin breasting the seas. But the dolphin also is the carrier of souls to paradise. And Yeats makes use of that too. But this is a woman who's surrounded by, as Eliot says, strange synthetic perfumes, unguent, powdered, or liquid. And all this stuff troubles, confuses, drowns the sense in odors. Stirred by the air that freshened from the window, these ascended in fattening the prolonged candle flames, etc. So you have this enclosed, claustrophobic, overly perfumed atmosphere where this woman is sitting, adorning herself, right? And then we get the reference to the change of Philomel. Above the antique marble was displayed as though a window gave upon the sylvan scene the change of Philomel by the barbarous king so rudely forced. This is the legend of Tereus, who was married to Procne, who raped Philomel or Philomela and cut out her tongue so that she wouldn't be able to tell. But she turned into a nightingale, could speak birdsong, and told the story in birdsong. But here she doesn't sing, she sings jug, 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 jug. Okay. So this is a story of, male brutality wreaked upon a woman. Not only that, but also the sister of his wife. And then the torture inflicted on her body. Language as bearing witness to ravagement, bearing witness to pain.
Now, Eliot, you described him as having an unhappy marriage. Can you go through that?
Miserable.
I'm
You're gonna
sorry.
see it. You're gonna see it in a minute because
Okay.
the next lines are taken from something like conversation between him and Vivian. My nerves are bad tonight. Yes, bad. Stay with me. Speak to me. Why do you never speak? Speak. What are you thinking of? What thinking? What? I never know what you're thinking. Think. I think we are in Rat's Alley where the dead men lost their bones. What is that noise? The wind under the door. What is that noise now? What is the wind doing? Nothing again, nothing. Do you know nothing? Do you see nothing? Do you remember nothing? I remember those are pearls that were his eyes. Are you alive or not? Is there nothing in your head? Eliot's wife, Vivian, critiqued these lines, by which I mean she read them. She said, I've made a few changes. She gave him the line, she's had five already, nearly died of young George. Um, let's see what else. What you get married for if you don't want children. She gave him that line, which is a great line. What you get married for if you don't want children. So she read these lines. I mean, Eliot and Vivian were miserable together. Miserable. Seriously, it's pretty heartbreaking. They were both really, really sick. She was neurostatic. She's probably manic depressive. She had kind of breakdown after breakdown. She'd have to be sent to the country to try to recover. Finally in 1933, he broke with her pretty cruelly, formally separated legally from her in 34. Her brother institutionalized her in what 37 or something, and she was institutionalized for 10 years until she died. And Eliot never saw her. He just completely broke with her. But no,
But
they were really, really unhappy.
but yet this is kind of an intimate thing. This is his art, and
Yep.
she's being let into. I mean, did he? I'm trying to picture the exchange. Was she a helpmate of him? Was she just going, this is this? I mean, how did that work?
Well, I don't know if she saw more than this section of Game of Chess. I don't know. I don't know. Because if you look at the facsimile wasteland, I can't remember seeing her comments in other sections. You know, I don't know much about her. You can see pictures of her in biographies, and she's pretty. She's, just like a flapper. She'll be sitting looking unhappy among a group of people. Yeah, Douglas.
I sent an email to the group with a link to the Wasteland. I think it was on YouTube, but it's really worth listening to Eliot read those lines because he puts some strange life into it.
Strange indeed. Yeah, yeah. And then we have, as you say, the vaudeville lines, vaudeville lines. Oh, 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 that Shakespearean rag. It's so elegant, so intelligent. That's like a Charleston rhythm. And then it switches again. What shall I do now? What shall I do? I shall rush out as I am and walk the street with my hair down. So, what shall we do tomorrow? What shall we ever do? The hot water at 10. And if it rains, a closed car at 4. And we shall play a game of chess, pressing lidless eyes and waiting for a knock upon the door. There used to be a line that says, the ivory men make company between us. Just sad, just this marriage in hell. And then this ominous knock upon the door again. What's the knock upon the door going to be? And that reminds me a little bit of the end of A Streetcar Named Desire when they come to get Blanche Dubois and carry her off to the asylum. There's a knock on the door. Now the voice changes, and I can't do a Cockney accent, but this is a Cockney accent. And this is, the whole kind of lower class London scene. When Little's husband got demobbed, I said, demobbed, of course, means sent back from World War One. I didn't mince my words. I said to her myself, and then, hurry up, please, it's time, which of course is what pub owners in England say when they're saying that you got to get out of here. But it's also like, really scary. Hurry up, please, it's time. I said to her, now Albert's coming back. Make yourself a bit smart. He'll want to know what you done with that money he gave you to get yourself some teeth. And you're like, oh my God, false teeth. He did. I was there. You have them all ill and get a nice set. He said, I swear I can't bear to look at you. And no more can't I said, and think of poor Albert. And this is like just the crass commercial. Like, if you don't want to give him a good time, I know somebody who will. Oh, yeah, you do you? Oh, yeah. Well, like that, right? I'll know who to thank, she says, and give me a straight look. If you don't like it, you can get on with it, I said. Others can pick and choose if you can't. But if Albert makes off, it won't be for lack of telling. You ought to be ashamed, I said, to look so antique and her only 31. And you're like, oh my God. And then you realize one reason she looks like hell is that she's had baby after baby after baby. I can't help it, she said, pulling a long face. It's them pills I took to bring it off, she said. She's had 5 already at age 31 and nearly died of young George. You are a proper fool, I said. Well, if Albert won't leave you alone, there it is, I said, what you get married for if you don't want children. And then that echo again, hurry up, please, it's time. Now, this reason is one of the weirdest reasons for getting married I ever heard of. Well, that Sunday Albert was home, they had a hot gammon, which is ham. And they asked me into dinner to get the beauty of it hot. It's like the closest I can figure out is she married him because she really liked that ham dinner, you know? And then the echo again, hurry up, please. Hurry up, please. It's time. Good night, Bill. Good night, Lou. Good night, May. Good night, Tata. Good night, good night. And then Ophelia in the mad scene. Good night, ladies. Good night, sweet ladies. Good night, good night. And off she wanders to go drown herself in the brook, you know? So as I said, I think this is a lot simpler series of juxtapositions, but it's all about the lives of women and the lives of women in their relationship with men and the way men hurt women, but also the way women destroy men, you know? You guys want to stop here or do you want to tackle the fire sermon? Barry's shaking his head. What's that mean? You're mute.
Keep going. I did want to ask one question.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious about Pound's editing of the poem, was there an overarching kind of rationale behind his edits? You mentioned something about him removing objectionable sections.
No, not
How,
objectionable, just
okay,
that weren't very good poetry.
okay, it was really
For
aesthetic.
instance, there's this long, long thing that begins part two. No, it begins, no, I'm sorry, it's in the fire sermon. And it's a second part of the fire sermon that Pound got rid of everything until a rat crept softly through the vegetation. And it's about this supposed woman called Fresca. And what Eliot is doing is imitating Alexander Pope's couplets, heroic couplets. And they stink and it's stupid. And it's like, you know, Fresca in other time or place had been a meek and lowly weeping Magdalene, more sinned against than sinning, bruised and marred, the lazy laughing Jenny of the bard. The same eternal and consuming itch can make a martyr or plain simple bitch, and goes on and on and on for 80 lines. And Pound cut it and he said, if you can't write heroic couplets better than Pope, you shouldn't write them, and you can't. So out we go, right? This is not the rape of the lock. And it's misogynistic and it's stupid. And it ends by referring to that good old female stench as Fresca is like on the toilet, and you're like, come on. And then you get, a rat crept softly through the vegetation, which is like really great, really great. Um, so no, Pound is cutting stuff that's not good poetry, and he's cutting toward moments of maximum intensity. Pound also was anti-Semitic. He was not bothered by that. Pound was a
So,
fascist.
so now we have a third, as you've mentioned before, we have a third contributor. Besides his wife, we have Pound. So
Oh,
this
Pound.
is
Eliot dedicates the poem to Pound il miglior fabbro, which means the better craftsman.
right. And so it really is collaborative. This is kind of, I mean, you said that before, but I'm thinking there's three people involved, not just two.
Well, only minorly Vivian, very minorly Vivian. Pound is a major involvement because Eliot was very good friends with Pound and really trusted Pound's artistic judgment. And Pound is a really considerable poet in his own right. But no, absolutely, this is very collaborative, and it would not have existed except for Pound's help.
Do you think that what did he start how about the instigation of the poem when he first started writing it? Did Pound have any input to
No,
that? Was he no? He started writing it by himself then and then showed it to Pound and Pound edited it. Is that how it worked?
I think that's probably too simple too. I mean, Eliot, he was writing. Eliot wrote a lot of his best poetry in his 20s. Okay, he wrote proofread when he was like 22. And I mean, I've taught 22-year-olds and they're not writing proofread, you know. He wrote, by the time he published this, he was what? I'm so bad at math, in his early 30s. He'd been working on this poem for a while, it came into existence slowly. And then in a rush in 1921, when he was at Lausanne, he finished it. And he didn't know ahead of time that it was going to have the shape it has, the number of sections that it has. Pound, the easiest way to talk about Pound's editing, except for what I already told you, is to look at part 4, Death by Water, which is very, very short. It's 8 lines. It was pages long, and it was all a narrative of a shipwreck. And Pound said, cut it all. But Eliot also was cutting. He was also good at cutting and saying, because it's like when you're writing, you have to let yourself write badly before you can write well. You've got to let yourself just dive in and see what happens. And then later take a look and say, okay, I can get rid of all of this. That's the problem that beginning poets make. They make 2 mistakes. Number one, they think that what they have to do is finish something the first time around. And so they don't start. And number 2 is they don't like to cut. They're like, but I wrote it. I wouldn't
Um,
have, I didn't believe, you gotta get rid of it if it's not good.
did how about you? Have you ever written a poem that you whipped off in 5 minutes that
Yeah,
you still thought was great?
yeah.
Well, I don't want you to be immodest here now, Anne,
No, I have.
but
Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it's like the wheels get lined up right, the gears get lined up, and it just rides, you know. Yeah, I have. But I also, okay, I'll tell you a story about one of my favorite of my poems, which is Blue Window, and it's the title poem of my first book. Okay. And it's like I had lines, who is it? Verlaine, I think it is, says the first line is given, you have to look for the rest. It's like something will give you a line, something will give you some words. It'll just pop into your head and you walk around with it. Okay. And so I had this first line that I liked, which was that was a time before sorrow. So I have to say most of my poetry is not like radically cheerful, but my dad died when I was 13 and that really changed a lot in my life, So that was the time before sorrow. I walked around with that line for 4 years and I'm like, so what am I going to say next? Okay, don't have anything to say about that. But I never forgot the line. And then one day I turned it upside down. I made it backwards in that shadowy time before sorrow. And all of a sudden, and that was after dinner, I remember I walked into my laptop and I sat down and I wrote this poem and I didn't change anything, you know? And that still is one of my poems that I think works the best because it's like it just opened a door and I knew what I wanted to say, you know? On the
yeah,
other hand, there are poems that don't ever work or poems that you
yeah.
just or you find out through it also helps to have really good people who can like critique your stuff, you know?
But sometimes you have a key idea that you think you could do it and you just can't make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's weird. I'm not sure I do want to continue, and the reason is we got a long ways to go here, and I don't want
Yeah.
to.
I think we'll
I,
keep on Thursday. Yeah, we can chat for a couple more minutes, but I don't think we should tackle the fire sermon yet because it's got a
yeah, it's
lot.
a lot more.
It's beautiful. Yeah, Barry.
I want to have you talk a little bit about the anti-Semitism thing. Was this something that was in vogue in
Oh
the
yeah.
intelligentsia at this
Oh
time?
God, yeah. Oh,
Okay,
absolutely. But
okay.
not just in the intelligentsia. Look at the world. Look at what led up to World War II, you know. But no, I mean, anti-Semitism was really widespread. Now, Joyce less so because Leopold Bloom is Jewish and he's, a very sympathetic character. Um, Williams less so. Eliot and Pound were very anti-Semitic in just nasty ways, especially Eliot. Eliot had so many hangups, about sex and the body and stuff, and he kind of projected all of that onto um, what he felt was like he read a really nasty version of Full Fathom Five, Thy Father Lies, a kind of nasty version about it. I don't even want to deal with it. I don't want to look it up. You're like, oh my God, this is disgusting. You know. Um, Eliot was a snob. I told you Virginia Woolf, who was a good friend of his, said he's the only person she knew who regularly wore a four-piece suit. That is to say, fancy was not enough for this gentleman, Um, he by the time he became famous, which is after the Wasteland, he lived a privileged life. He was dry, but he knew it. I want to read you one more thing, which is so beautiful, and I'm not sure I can find it right away. He's talking about, oh gosh, I wish I could find it. I can't find it. When I find it, I'll read it to you because it explains so much. Can't remember he's talking about Baudelaire when he says, he could not escape his suffering, he could not change his suffering, but he could write it.
This I haven't thought about this in 50 years, but when I was in grad school, I was talking, and it might have been at a bar with a grad school professor, I believe it was history, and he was maybe 50 years old. And he had this weird notion that he said, I'm so sophisticated. He wasn't bragging. He was saying, I've filled my life with so much sophistication. I know 7 languages. I'm a scholar in several fields, and I've traveled the world. How could I ever find a woman that would match that? That's not what he said. He just said, the furniture of my life is so rich that it won't let anybody else in. I could not abide it. And it was kind of confessional. He wasn't bragging. He was just saying, and so it made me think of Eliot, except I guess Eliot was fine with it, but this guy was kind of, uh, the word isn't ashamed. He was, it seemed tragic to me the way he was describing it, that he
Yeah.
thought his way out of civilization.
Or into civilization.
Well,
Yeah.
and but not into companionship
Yeah,
though.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, poor thing.
I know.
I mean, there are some very smart women in the world. He might have looked a little harder. Maybe Hannah Arendt could have given him a run for his money, you know?
There you go.
Or Anais
Maybe not
Nin.
in his circle.
Yeah, or nice, yeah. Or Jane Goodall. I mean, like, get over it, mister,
Well,
Or Hillary Clinton.
he wasn't really bragging. He was just saying,
I know.
I'm
Truthful.
so picky and so intellectual that I can't hang with people that aren't, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. Well, any other comments or anything before we?
That's bragging by another name.
It is. It is.
okay, humble brag, whatever it is.
It's true.
Now,
It's true.
I must say, I hope this got recorded. I know it got recorded, but I hope the sound got recorded because I switched this on really quickly and Zoom has all these controls. I just hope that I have it right. So if I
That's okay.
didn't, my great apologies to everyone.
That's all right. Oh, I have to tell you, speak about bragging by another name. I'm not going to name names here, but my first night at Pomona College was deeply traumatizing because many things. First, we had to go through running the gauntlet, right? Getting the measurement thing.
Oh
Did you guys
God.
do that? Lauren and Laurel and Deborah, did you do that?
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
To our remorse, right? So we did that, which is like pretty stinky. But then also we had to have our first dinner at Frary, right? And line up at Frary. And I was standing behind two girls who were very talkative. They were making friends with each other. And the one was saying to the other, I'm just so beautiful. It's just always been such a problem. I'm like, oh my God. I got so freaked out.
I
I think I ate. I
I
just
I
left.
have the same problem.
Yeah, you're so beautiful. And then I wandered around campus for hours. I was just like so completely terrified. And then, so I lived in Mud Blaisdell. And you remember how we had to be in by 11 or we would get like, sent to hell, right? So at 5 minutes to 11, I'm standing in front of this building that says Blaisdell. And I'm like, oh my God, where am I supposed to be? I've been to like Harwood, I've been to Wig. I don't know where mud is. Turned out there was a bush that had grown through the word mud, right? Grown in front of it. And I went up to this couple who's standing there kissing. I'm like, excuse me, could you please tell me where mud is? They go, it's here. So that was my first day at Pomona from I'm just so beautiful. It's always been such a problem to not being able to find my own dorm.
I was been there for the summer because there was a much smaller group. Brian, of course, was there, and 20, 26, I guess, or 27 other people. And I mean, I was really young because I was 16 when I came, and I would have been terrified, except that we'd had a summer together. So I sort of felt like I had this little community, and I
Yeah.
faculty. And Don Bentley had already decided to sort of swipe me from chemistry and switch me over to math. So I kind of had a sense, although he was sort of a tyrant about it, but it worked. But
That's cool.
I knew people, so I thought a lot of the stuff was silly. And the rivalry thing, the freshman sophomore rivalry thing, I just thought was insane, daft, juvenile, high school. And when someone actually, you know what, Joanne, my dear friend Joanne, got involved in it, and the reason I met her was that she came around trying to convince me, and I said I had enough of that in high school. That's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, we became close friends. But all that the weighing in and the sort of, I guess I did it, but I thought it was kind of superficial. It didn't really affect
Duh.
other things.
It does, right? I know. I did not have the sense to see through it. I really didn't. I was just like drinking the Kool-Aid, you know.
My
I was
God.
like so anxious.
I got a different form of Kool-Aid. I got the summer NIH Kool-Aid, and though that was sort of had its own harsh moments, because the first 2 weeks they put us in well, it was actually in Mud Blaisdell, in Mud, and or Blaisdell, I guess we were on the Blaisdell side, and it was only marginally supervised by the French house mother, who
Hmm.
really didn't speak anything but French most of the time, and as I only knew a tiny bit of French. That anyway, there was a lot of activity going on. Brian, you used to play French horn at very weird hours in the night,
Still do.
and we could all hear it. So if you tried to sleep through the night, there's this lovely sounds of French horn emanating.
Hi. Hey, you guys. Oh my God.
We got it. We had a test, and we had to write a paper and turn it in. And some of us
Several papers.
were not very conscientious about all of this during the first 2 weeks.
Hmm.
And they sent in the leadership of the NIH program to read us the Riot Act about how we were the worst NIH group ever.
Oh, that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, exactly.
Only two so far. The year before, apparently, they were all extremely conscientious, and we were really bad.
That's really funny.
And so then they yelled at us about how awful we were. So then most of us did settle down the rest of the summer. And I was so mortified by having gotten a D on Bentley's probability and statistics test that I got hundredth the rest of the summer, which made an impression on him. But actually, a D was one of the better grades. There were a lot of Fs.
Oh yeah.
And anyway, but it was I kind of got a lot of stuff out of my system, plus feeling like there was this little community of people I already
Yeah,
knew.
that's nice.
So
That's
it didn't
nice.
coming to such a strange place.
Well, guys, I will see you Thursday. Thank you for being here. We will plunge on with the wasteland. Bye. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks,
Okay,
Ann.
great. See you then. Thanks, Ann.
Bye.
Stay. Bye bye.